welcome to a Buy Round podcast special. I'm James Graham, and in this 10-part series, I'll discuss the biggest, most talked about topics around our great game.
Rugby League Roundtable.
Joining me, leading journalist Danny Weidler.
So I thought, oh, that's a bit odd that the boss of the game hadn't heard about it.
Current South Sydney Rabbitohs coach Jason Demetriou.
A powerful try.
Former Premiership winning CEO Shane Richardson.
You've got to make some really unpopular decisions.
And Cronulla Sharks captain Dale Finucane.
And the Sharks are off and running.
Today we're going to be talking about the impact the media coverage has on the game.
A Buy Round podcast special.
Rugby League Roundtable. All right, well, this next topic promises to be an absolute cracker. A game that was, in not too far long ago, was one game a week. Match of the day is now a 24-hour news cycle in all walks of life, and rugby league is no different with a 24-hour a day rugby league channel dedicated to rugby league. Danny, I'll come to you first.
I feel like there's a lot of eyes on me all the time.
Yeah, well, you're the star of the show in this one.
Victim.
Oh, dear.
I'm ready.
How did it get to this?
Well, I'll take it back. Like when I started in the late 80s, just making my way into media, and I sort of got my most significant break probably in about 96 joining the Sun Herald, and that was that's a weekly paper. And we used to have a meeting on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, or probably a Wednesday, and talk about stories we were planning to write that Sunday. And we could sit on stories from that Wednesday, big stories, to the Sunday. And, you'd be worried, you'd wake up the next day and see if the other papers had them. But that was your main form of competition. The papers, TV wasn't really a competition. The internet wasn't there. So, and I think that's probably been the biggest change is the online presence of media and social media and Twitter and all that stuff. So that has changed media completely.
But the narrative is dictated to by your Nines, your Foxes, and the shows that and the agenda items that they would bring up pre-post game, and then on those midweek shows as well.
But that's all changed. That didn't exist. So that's what I'm saying. Like that's all about driving content on their social platforms, their online, and also on their TV shows, obviously to get people to watch. But it's just the massive. The media is a huge beast now. It wasn't like that when Richie. You remember the days of there'd be, a couple of dozen journos, and that'd be it, and you'd know all of them, and you'd probably have personal relationships with them. And you were saying to me just before we were doing this podcast, you remember the first time you met me, like whatever, 20, 30 years ago, and
Cronulla.
Yeah, and you got to know people. Like I don't get the chance now to know players or people. Like I've interviewed Dale a stack of times. I wouldn't say we know each other, but I've interviewed you a bunch of times. Back then, you'd spend time in dressing rooms with players. You'd get to know them. You'd have a personal relationship with them, and there was a greater trust. There's a barrier now between coaches, players. I mean, I can ring you and we can have a chat, but I mean, I still don't get to know you. Yep. But I mean, we'd spend much more time with people, and you'd form a far greater trust with a player, and I think the lack of exposure that the media has with personal relationships with players is a reason why things have changed a lot.
Why?
Well, there's more brutality. There's more, Dale Finucane, he's just a name, or Jason's just another name, and you'd have. I think people don't have the same compassion or the same level of awareness of how they're impacting people in stories they're presenting, writing, taking the piss out of people. I still consider that I try and have the person in the forefront of my mind when I'm doing a story. I don't know if everybody does, and I don't know if everybody cares at all. I mean, I'm not saying I'm some sort of saint as a journo, but I'm just saying that I think that the division between coaches, players, and the media has never been greater, and that impacts the way stories get presented. I mean, you guys probably have good relationships with certain media people, and that's just, but back in the day, they'd be even stronger and greater. Like I've known Richo for
1994,
a long time, and we've had a lot of discussions. I don't think we've really had any blues.
One
blue.
I'm about to announce
Okay,
it to you.
one blue.
Well,
So-
Danny,
No, the thing about Danny was my relationship. Danny was one of those, when he rang you up, he wouldn't ring you up to say, "How you going, Richo?" So you know that straight away. But he rang you up, though. He got a story he believed was a story, and he rang you to find out what your situation on it. A lot of guys nowadays will never ring you. They write the story, or they say they tried to ring you or otherwise, but they didn't. And so Danny would do that, and then Danny, I'd go through all the thing with Danny, and Danny say, "Yeah, that's good, Richo, but I reckon my story's right." And so I just think that that sort of relationship is, and there were quality journos. See, journos in those days, the Steve Mascords and the Peter Frelingosses and the great journos of our time, and they could really write a good story, and they got it accurately correct. They prided themselves on being accurate. Now, that might have been a bagging of you, your team performance, but they were accurate about what they said. So you couldn't really whinge about them because you knew them and they were doing their job, but you had a relationship, or you could ring them up and they'd answer straight away and say, "Yeah, I know, Richie, you're about to get up me, but mate, yeah, I know, mate, but it's bullshit. What are you doing?" That was a relationship you had. It wasn't always. There was never this always your arm around you're going to do the right thing by you, but you had a trust with them that they
you could work with someone.
Yeah, and they would always ring you to tell you the story was going to break and give you an opportunity, not text you, knowing that you won't pick the call up.
I remember a sensitive story we had was when Greg was going to rehab.
Yep.
And I rang you. I said, "Richo, how are we going to handle this? I know it's happening and it's a big story and he's playing and he's going." And we managed our way through it, didn't we? And look, that's what I'm talking about in terms of you've got to have a relationship with someone. And Jason, I know we went through a hard time recently with you, and I did try and call you. I did try and reach out to you to hear what you had to say about stuff. And I know we haven't got the tightest relationship, but I mean, I still felt like I needed to call you and try and discuss things or text you and try and work things through. So you are after, in my position, I do pride myself on accuracy. Yeah. And I want to be right because, as I've said previously on other podcasts, I'd rather miss a story than be wrong because that the wrong story stays with you. Yeah. That stays in my heart, in my head and my heart, and I'm thinking, oh, geez, that shits me that I didn't get that right or didn't. And I don't know if I get, like I don't know if I got all of that right. I don't know if I got all of that right. But you try and get as much right as possible, and some journos don't care as much. I don't know.
Well, they don't care. The journos today, and there's a lot of they're good blokes. Love to have a beer with some of them and all the rest of it, but mate, they're not accurate, and they're not interested in the story. They're interested in the clickbait. Now, I'll give you a classic example of clickbait. So, if you're going to write a story and you want a lot of exposure, who's the number one player you want to write a story about? Latrell Mitchell. So you write a story on Latrell Mitchell, and you say in the story, criticising his game and his fitness, and fine, you've got every right to do that. Your performance, you don't ever mind that. But then you go on to get involved with the things internally in the club, and that he's leading an Indigenous revolution, and say, well, we've been indigenously revolutionary since 1931, the first black player. My point about it, that's all right. So that comes out, it does it. Latrell has to deal with it, but that doesn't stop. In those days, the story was written, it was a quality story, you checked it out, but the story doesn't stop. So what do you do the next day? You ring up everybody you can who's even slightly associated with Latrell Mitchell, whether it be Greg Inglis or his agent, but more importantly, people who are associated with the club who haven't been doing anything in the club for 30 years. And then finally somebody will say something, I've got the story now for the next day. Yeah. And clickbait, it's Latrell Mitchell. And the numbers go up and up and up. And you're being rewarded, and probably financially, by the way, for getting the clickbait. That's the problem you've got, is that there is no such thing as accuracy about what you're doing.
Well, the story doesn't die with the article, does it? Because then it comes up on shows like this.
Yeah.
Like
or other media outlets. Or,
But in the old days, it did die because what happened was you pounded them, you've done the wrong thing, you got on with it, you made the story, you and Dwayne may not, but it's gone. Not now.
Yeah, everyone has an opinion on it, on all the opinion
for 24
shows.
hours, bang, bang, bang. And mate, there's some niff-nuffs out there who are reporting in the game who you just think, they're very lucky, very, very fortunate that you have spell check. Because there's no way they could write an article without it.
For instance, the Ben Hunt story, that had a peak. It had when Ben was involved and wanting to talk about it, and then it dipped and went away because Ben said nothing. And then he does a couple of interviews and it just rears its head again. Yep. And then all of a sudden there's predictions that this is going to be the biggest story of the off season. And all of a sudden all the journos are going, okay, well I better find out what's going with Ben Hunt. Yeah, it ebbs and flows, and
Well, when it's quiet, you almost need to write an opinion piece on it, because if you're silent, you're lost
on that sort of story.
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
Well, one of the biggest clickbaits actually happened to me recently. I googled NRL news, and up came the story: Hunt leaves Dragons for Queensland club. Clicked on it. Jaden Hunt.
There you go.
Yeah, correct.
I nearly smashed my phone.
Yeah, well, there you fell for it.
I was like,
You fell for it.
Got me.
And like you talk about, I don't look at when I'm not doing stories for clicks. I mean, you might think I'm full of it, but I'm doing a story because I think it's an interesting story or it's newsworthy. And
but you're a face story. You need the face of the person a lot of time, but interviews are
your reputation.
You're not sitting there on the line.
It's not just Joe Blow, Danny Average.
But I get why people get the shits with it, and I get why people think it's just clickbait. And sometimes it is.
Would you feel like you're obliged? You've got a certain number of stories you've got to produce.
I don't.
You don't.
No.
You never feel obliged.
I didn't do a story today on the news. Like I told them I have to exit early to do the podcast, and they said, "Oh well,
thanks."
There's not an obligation for me to do a story. If I had a cracking yarn, I would have had to say to you guys, "Sorry, there's a big story breaking. I can't come." But so there's not a. I do have an obligation to write a column every week.
Oh, all the CEOs can sleep tonight.
But I mean, like there's some obligation to do a story, and like if I sat in the office and didn't do anything for a couple of weeks, they'd say, "What the hell are you doing?" But you do. It's like every other field. You want to win. You want to win. You want to win. I want to win.
Yep.
I want to. It's the only area of my life where I'm competitive. I don't give a rat's ass if I lose.
Do the
a game of
boundaries
ping pong.
ever get crossed there?
You have to be really careful not to cross the boundaries. That's up to an individual's morality and an individual's approach to their job.
Yeah.
Well, there's serious litigation as well.
Of course
for
there is.
journalists. Like that's one of the things I know is there's not a story without someone giving a story.
Yeah,
correct.
Journo can't just make a story up. They'll have an.
It's
They
happened.
can.
It's
Some
happened
of it
this
comes
year.
off
It's
social media,
actually
mate.
happened
They
this
haven't
year.
investigated. They've picked it up off social media and then delved into it.
Yeah, and again, so they're getting it from somewhere. But and there's opinion pieces. NRL 360's full of opinion pieces, and then that becomes clickbait and that becomes stories. But it's not actually a he said, she said type of story. You know what I mean? So for me, that's the agenda side of it's probably the biggest problem.
Well, I was going to ask you, JD, you as a coach, it's sort of a necessary evil, the media. Are you, as starting off on your coaching journey, are you surprised by just how influential and how powerful certain media personalities are?
Oh, I have. Yeah, there's no doubt the last few months have definitely raised that awareness. But I think for me, it's probably learning how the game works. You know what I mean? I'm consider myself quite astute when it comes to the crossing the T's and dotting the I's on the training field and player relationships and all that sort of stuff. But this is it's a different beast. It's an understanding of, again, I think sometimes as a coach it's probably best not to buy into it too much and not to give it too much of your thought process, because at the end of the day you've got a job to do. And for me, the biggest thing I need to make sure we control is what goes on in our four walls stays in our four walls. And that's the most important part, because without that, there's no stories. And that's probably the most important thing that I can control. And again, winning teams don't have those problems. When your team's having a few losses, The worst thing that can happen is you get a blame culture. You get somebody saying it's him or her or him, and that happens. You know, that teams that have been at the bottom end of the table for a long period of time are ridiculed with that problem because everybody thinks they want success and everybody thinks they got the answer. And when they don't get it, then we're going to point fingers. And pointing fingers generally to get your way now, because the media is so big, is to leak a story. And that all of a sudden it blows up and it drives this massive agenda towards the direction that you want it to go. And the only way you can do that is to have well, that's not true. I'm going to say this, but that just fuels it even more. So it's really
See, I'm not complaining about the fact that this has happened because it's happened. It's like we talked about before. What it's going to look like in 5 years' time. It is what it is. So I'm not, but I'm just. You can't compare it to what it was. Is what Danny was saying because it's not. It's another environment, and my way of dealing with it is I just don't. I honestly, like was so. I just don't. I'm not on social media. I'm on Facebook, but that's the old granddaddy one, so no one goes on that and bags you out. But the thing,
I'll bag you on there, Richard.
So the thing about it is not. There's two things about it. So you've got to deal with it and understand it and work with it. Yeah. But the second thing was the point you made before. There is no place that I've ever been involved with, Brisbane, Sydney, or Melbourne, the viciousness of the anger between the news organisation in Sydney outruns everybody. Yeah. In Melbourne, you might have a challenge with the age, but at the end of the day, mate, they work in together with the league, and it's nothing like that here. That's when they get an agenda on you as a person or otherwise, they will drive it no matter what, and you can never do anything wrong.
You've been the.
Oh, I have.
I've seen you targeted.
I don't. I used to say to Nick Pappas, mate, I want to sue, and he said, "But Richard, that's great. It'll cost you 150, you'll get 72 back." and he's right because at the end of the day, your point was the best. Just don't fan it.
Yeah.
Don't respond to it. Just get on with the job and do your job. And if you do your job,
it's not that easy not to respond. Like, if there things are being said about you that are blatantly incorrect, you as a competitive, proud person, you want to straighten it out.
But I know, mate, that the minute I respond, the clickbait sets in. Yeah, because they've got another story that afternoon because Richardson says this, and then they'll ring Richardson, Nick Pappas, and then they'll ring. So if I don't say anything and just go on with it, I'll make comments about things like today and what I think and other. But when it's a personal vendetta, and there's been a few over the years.
There's been a few on you.
Pardon?
There's been a few.
Oh, absolutely. There still is. Yeah. But at the end of the day, they're not my mates. Yeah, it's funny with journos. Like, there's about 3 I don't like. The rest of them I get on really well with and enjoy, and even the blokes with the spell check. But at the end of the day, there's a viciousness and nastiness that's never going to change because you know yourself, mate. You're never going to be able to change the way they think about you. No. You think you will, but it's like playing with a cobra. You got past 3 times getting around him, and all of a sudden, bang, he hits you and you're dead. So you don't let him hit you. You stay away from the cobra.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is driven by. A lot of it's been driven by people who want to get an outcome.
Correct.
Whether it be in clubland or through the media. And generally, the clubs and players are using the media to get what they want. So we go back to the Ben Hunt thing. Like, there was as soon as Ben Hunt makes a comment, that's it then. It's huge. It's a huge comment to make.
Yep.
And then it goes through what it goes through. Well, he's in Origin camp and you have opportunity to shut it down. But obviously, he's in his head. There's a thought maybe it's time to move on. So the only way I can do that is to blow it up a little bit.
Ben Hunt's very honest.
Very honest. Very honest. Benny Hunt's a great bloke.
Yeah, I agree.
Massive fan of Benny.
And I broke that story originally and without quotes from Ben Hunt. But I'd talked to enough people who knew the story was coming out and Ben Hunt was comfortable with that story coming out. And if I had any doubt about it, I wouldn't have done it.
Exactly.
And I knew it was right because I'd done my research on it. And when Ben came out and confirmed it, yes, you feel relieved or better that, yes, your story's 100% right and it's been confirmed.
Yeah.
You always want the confirmation. But my advice is if you're talking about the Cobras and all that, sometimes if you can somehow befriend the media or work with the media, I know it doesn't always work.
My point is, though, you can befriend 97 of them. There's 3 that no matter what you did,
you can't change the way they are.
And that's what I'm saying. I don't judge the media as the media.
Yeah.
You're doing bad. There's just certain personalities that you're just not going to change the way they think about you. So just stay away from it. You know what I mean?
And they're going to attack you.
When a number comes up on my phone, and I answer it every time, those numbers. When it comes up, because I don't want to give them any chance to say that I haven't spoken to them about it. but I know it's not going to be good for me. They're not ringing me because, Richo, you're a fantastic guy.
Yeah.
It's also, Richo, I've got something I want to check with you.
Yeah.
And if you don't answer it, all they do is text you. And then you didn't respond to the text, so you might as well just deal with it up front. Yep. And that's what I'll talk about. I'm going to save this for my final stuff.
As a coach, you want to protect your players. That's first
Correct.
and foremost what you want to do. And when they're getting dragged, that's when you probably get you back up a little bit. And I feel like that's probably, it's not about me. I don't mind people say about me because I know the truth, but it's when your players sort of get thrown in the deep end and the information in and around Latrell and things like that, you know that aren't true, and I know the consequence of that is just going to be complete hate towards Latrell.
Latrell, correct.
And he's at home doing nothing. The poor bloke tore his calf and battled for 10 weeks to try to get on the field at the time of tearing his calf, arguably one of the best fullbacks in the game. And now he's getting hammered because of a story that he's had no control over or no input in at all. That's where, for me, where I get, hang on, I
agree with you on that.
That's not right. But again, how do you control that?
Sometimes in that situation,
yeah,
you're best off saying, Latrell, speak to the media and tell them the truth.
Yeah.
Come out. Because I'll tell you what, that's what I want to hear. I don't want to hear this guy said that guy said that, and you're doing stories on. You're doing stories on, Damien Cook says Latrell Mitchell is a great bloke, right?
Is that the best way to manage it?
I'd rather hear from the person.
It's the same as I used to.
He's answering. How does he answer the fact that they're saying that he runs the club? It's not his position to answer that.
And even if he says he doesn't, they're not going to believe him anyway.
I learned a long while ago, though, mate.
But other people might believe him. The punters might believe him then.
The more you try and hide a player's behaviour today, it's impossible. So you used to try and keep it under. I've got a few friends of yours who I've had dealings with over the years underneath the rug. But I learnt 10 years ago, Richo, this is a waste of time. As soon as it happens, declare it, bring it up front,
and move on.
Because you can, and it's going to come out anyway, and then you're going to be look like a liar or a cheater or otherwise. And even when you do come out, they still don't believe you half the time. But the reality is, you've put it up front, you've lanced the wound. That's what I like to say. Yeah. And then you can get on with life. It'll still click around.
Yeah, and it's not always perfect. It doesn't always give you the perfect outcome, but at least you deal with it.
Yep.
The problem with in this situation, it's not an event or it's not an action or something that happened. It's an opinion.
Correct.
And how do you answer an opinion that you don't think's correct? You know what I mean? Like, well, no, that's not true. The journalists are ringing me saying I'm running this story, and I said, well, that's not true. Well, I'm running it anyway.
Yeah.
Well,
they're only ringing you to say I contacted anyone.
Why are you ringing me then?
Yeah, that's what they're doing it for.
You want me to answer? So I'm not talking about, well, we know in-house how it works and how Latrell is, and but just what I know from him is that it's still going. It hasn't ended.
No.
For Latrell. Like, because he's that bigger icon and a celebrity in the game.
Correct.
That anything he does, I mean, was it last week about
not signing autographs?
He's at a event for an under-8s carnival in Penrith that he's driven to be supportive of, and he's signed hundreds. He just doesn't want to take photos because if you take a photo, you're going to be there all day. So I'll sign it, kids. And then if I'm watching, I'll sign it in a minute, whatever. But that, because of what had happened previous weeks, that's a bigger story. If that
correct
allegation against Latrell hadn't happened, that's a non-story. But all of a sudden, it's a story because we keep that going.
I largely think that was a non-story anyway.
So do I. It is a non-story.
And I wouldn't have necessarily believed some open line caller. I would have gone further and tried to ask a bunch of people who were there. But anyway, that's.
But do you think the public sees through that anyway? Like, obviously, that story you talked about where when you put it into context and see that he was out at a football game personally, and he's done that. Like, I think people see through that.
Some
they
people
see the
do.
context of the story.
Some people do. But a lot of people who want to not like Latrell will go, I told you, I knew what he was like. That just confirms it for them, and they go with it. You know what I mean? But
it comes back to a matter of opinion, doesn't it?
On its own, it's a non-story, and it's something he'd probably whatever. But off the back of what had been previously been, then it's like, they're coming after me type thing.
I tell you,
that's how he would view it, which would make sense.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. It made me sick to the stomach, the stuff that was written. Not about his form or that's what you drink over a beer over. You expect that. Dale Finucane missed that tackle. But, I get back to what you thought, mate. Police should raid over 70 years garages and arrest them because they're the dickheads who are making these comments about Latrell which are racist and
yeah.
disgraceful. They're not the general population.
No. Well, that's what social media does. It's giving the minority a
Yeah,
voice.
it is, mate. It does. It does.
Really.
Well, that links in because the media they drive the agenda. They come up with the topics. They come up with the stories. They drive a lot of conversation in the pub. They drive the conversation at school drop off. At local amateur parks when people are dropping their kids off and hanging around. It's, hey, did you see that game? Oh, what about that story? Hey, did you hear about Latrell? This all happens. I just want to come to you, Danny, and ask you. There seems to be an observation and a narrative that the AFL down in Melbourne look after their players and their game from a media perspective better than what we do here in Sydney in the NRL. Is that true? Do you feel that's true? And if so, why is that the case?
Well, I don't follow the AFL media that closely, but I know there are some pretty hard-nosed reporters down there who go pretty hard at things. So I don't know whether they're going hard necessarily at the administrators more and the officials of the game and the coaches rather than the players. So I can't say with any honesty whether that I know that they go easier on the players. I get accused of being either too hard on players or too soft on. I get both. People say, you're just doing a nice positive story. Why don't you do when was the last positive story you did? So you don't. Look, I don't know the AFL situation, but I've got to be from speaking from my experience, I've got to be at the coalface. I go to the clubs pretty much every day and go up and speak to the players face to face, the coaches face to face. I've got to show my face at things. So I'm not going to attack the people I'm seeing every moment. But if there's a story or they've done something wrong, I have to pursue that. So I don't have a personal agenda against, Jason or Dale or you. I covered you in your career. Did I have an agenda against you? I don't think I did. I don't. But certain clubs just don't like what you do or like what you say.
Let me Google that, mate.
You can't, as a journo, I don't think that most journos don't wake up in the morning and say, all right, how am I going to get Shane Richardson? One or two might.
Yep.
How am I going to get, how am I going to get you fired? I wrote a column when you were going through all that stuff that I think this is either the beginning of the end for you or the end of the beginning.
Yeah,
by that I mean this is a line in the sand for you, and I say it to your face, and I write it when I write a column, and this is your chance now, and this is you've done your apprenticeship, you've been through a shitstorm, now it's your chance to say, okay, well, this is my team, this is how I'm doing it. And it's going to make or break you. Simple as that. And you know that. And I'll say it to you, and I'll say it on TV. And I don't have any fear in saying that because that's what I believe. And I think that, it's going to be a testing year for Souths and testing year for you as a coach. And I think that you're going to either rise or you're going to have a tough year. You don't know.
And every year's a tough year. Every year's a year where you're going to be tested.
Yeah, but you don't need me to tell you that. But that's my job.
Not at all. I don't mind. That's a fair assessment of the situation and where we're at, and we're at that. And there's things I need to be better at inside our four walls to make sure that we're not having these conversations.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. In the whole story, what upset me the most was that the players were bought into it, because I know how that's going to affect them. So my first thought is, man, I need to speak to Latrell, I need to speak to Cody, because they're sitting back going, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
So, and we're going to
And I know it's your instinct to protect the players
Protect the players.
which is what a good coach does.
Yeah. But again, we all learn from it, But again, I don't mind that so much. I mean, I talked to Dave Riccio about it, about running a story that Lachlan Ilias wasn't going to play unless Latrell was playing. And and I bit at that in a post-match press conference because, first and foremost, it's not even close to being true. And I said, I don't understand why we're having these conversations about something that is not true. No one in this club has given you that information, and if they have, then it's not true. And a simple conversation.
He could have got a bum steer.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. A simple conversation to me, and to be fair, Dave did try to ring me, and I didn't get back to him in time. But I said, okay, well, then don't. Just wait until you speak to me before you talk about it. And I respect Davey's, always pretty honest with me and always ring you and as you do and say this is what I'm hearing or whatever. But that again, I go back to it's just the agenda that okay, now we're going to talk about this, even though there's no fact in it, but we can still talk about it. There's
like so in that Dave situation, like because you don't get back to him. He might have been under deadline pressure, or I don't know. I didn't see the story, but it might have been a news where he's under pressure and he's tried to call you, and the editor says or the lawyer says you need to ring Jason about this story. Yeah, and like every week I write a column. The first person who reads it is my editor. The second person who reads it is the lawyer. Yeah. And the lawyer will come back with all these red marks and things saying, "All right, you got to ring this bloke. You can't write that. That's coming out. Yeah. You can't say this. You can't say that. You need to ring this person. You need to ask them this question," and you do it.
Yeah, but for me, I shouldn't have been engaged in it. Yeah, because all it did was create a bigger story.
It did.
You know, I should have just.
Good thing is, I don't remember it. Yeah. So you remember it, but
that's an interesting point you make about a lot of journalists that they don't remember, but the person that it impacts, they do.
Yeah, and of course they do. Yeah,
and even when you're talking about writing about South Sydney, moving into season 2024, the pressure now begins, and no doubt we'll have conversations on this podcast about where we think South will go and what needs to change and what we think needs to happen, and that all adds to
you're paid to have an opinion.
Yeah, but is it right? We've got so much conversation and add to the unnecessary pressure.
We can't take it back. Yeah, it can't come back. I mean,
the horse is bolted, right?
These shows that are on, they're not going to suddenly go away. I don't think they're going to go away. They're not. The people on it may change. Like I see you're back on Fox and doing stuff, and because you've got strong opinions, you've got a different perspective on the game, and that's why you're being recruited to do stuff, because you come at things from a different angle, you provide different content, you provide a different outlook on things, and an intelligent one, which is what I think a lot of the media need, more intelligent former players or former coaches with strong opinions. You don't want to hear them say nothing. Like, you're not going to get that job if you're saying nothing. Like when you have your tanties on radio, and that makes great stuff. I love listening to that.
But that's great conversation, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's conversation.
It's not personal attacks.
You're looking at what the team's done, where do you think they're going to go, and you're having conversation, and we want that because that drives interest in the game. Again, I go back to it, but the Sharks lose the finals games. What's going on in the preseason? They're going to be focused on getting better and going better than they did last year. They've got a point to prove. So anything that's said externally, they're already addressing that internally, as we will be. Our focus will be on how do we make sure we're better. Because we're going to be harder on ourselves than anyone else who's going to write. It's I think it's just around the conversations that start about topics that aren't actual fact.
Yeah, Danny, just on some of those topics that aren't fact, or some of the leaks within.
You love snitches, don't you? Snitches.
Yeah, love a snitch. Are there contacts at most clubs?
Are there contacts? Yeah, most
we'll give you a story. How does that make you feel as the coach, JD?
Oh, it's disappointing. Again, it goes back to the integrity of who's working in your organisation. And again, it's.
But I'll tell you where most of the leaks come, because I've done 30 years of dealing with it. Most CEOs. Of the leaks come from some CEOs actually think that by leaking they're able to getting to it, but they think that by doing that they can actually. It's all rubbish, because once you give a story to you, then all of a sudden the bloke at Seven's going to blue or Fox is going to. It doesn't work that way. Where it comes from, mate, is you'll discuss things and with the players and what's going on and your plans for the week, and they'll tell their manager. And managers have got the greatest in with reporters of all time. And that's a fact, because they deal in that all the time. So that'll come from them. The player might not even want to say it, but he's told the manager, and the manager will think he'll get brownie points from the press by leaking it. Let's be brutally honest. Like, there's no way Nick Pappas or Blake Solly's going to. They're not saying they're not going to cajole the story, but I mean actually leaking stuff that was leaked out there, that has to come through the players onto the manager, who then gets on with it. That's where the most part of those sort of stories break.
I do think managers have a lot of power, and they can influence the media. I'll say that much.
That can change coaches.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's it. You're definitely on the money that managers do have a lot of information. Not all of them choose.
That's
to
a
give
lot
out
of power to have as
Absolutely
well.
it
Like
is.
knowing that the pen is mightier than the sword.
Yeah, that's a lot of power to have.
So just say, like, I'll say to Dale, mate, you know, so-and-so, and he knows you're going to work on 360 tomorrow night, so, yeah, you just let him know. And everyone will come back. Well, I didn't say a thing. I didn't speak to James Graham. I haven't had a conversation with James Graham in 6 months.
Yep.
Yeah, it's bullshit.
Well, how did that get out?
It
doesn't matter whether you have the direct conversation. It's where it starts.
indirect.
And there's
Yeah.
players with contracts with these media organisations. We're paying a shitload of money, and they've got a direct relationship with the people involved. And there's no way that they don't. That person's not rung 1 or 2 times a week to talk to what's going on. So
Well, I can honestly say when I was playing at both the Bulldogs and the Dragons, I had a job at Fox on 360. I never took an extra call. I never gossiped about anything that was going on in my
but
football
you're a
club.
pretty unique individual.
yeah, we're a particular.
Do you mean on the show? Do you mean?
No, I'd talk about issues on the show, but I wouldn't be backstage saying that.
Off the record, this is what's going on. Yeah.
What about since you finished playing?
No.
I love that.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I genuinely just wouldn't.
But some people have an interest in it, some people don't. Yeah, and
I'm not a big
people.
I despise gossip. Despise it.
But just go
Like,
back
Mum,
to the
integrity
of the people in your building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, well, with my family, there's no worse conversation start with my mother than, you know what I've heard, or starting a sentence with apparently. I'm like, switch off. I'm not interested. I'm not interested in apparently or
And
what you've
you weren't
heard.
really interested in publicity as a player. I mean, I remember when you were becoming a dad, and I heard about it, and you said, "I don't want that story to be written. I don't want my family." Right? Yeah, I just dropped right off. You know what I mean? So I mean, you weren't a seeker of that, publicity.
We're going to take a quick break from the podcast to tell you about AG1, the daily foundational nutritional drink with all your needs in the one place. I like to look after my health, and AG1 takes care of that for me. No more tablets, vitamin pills, all the health nutrition I need, all in the one place. Every single morning, it's as easy. Open up the fridge, scoop of AG1 in a glass, cold water, stir it with a fork, drink it. It tastes great, and it helps me know. It gives me the peace of mind that all my nutritional needs are taken care of, all in the one drink. It really is as simple as that. And also, anybody that knows anything about health benefits knows that it comes with adding simple routines to your day. It's not about magic pills. They're not going to work. AG1 helps me be the best version of myself by having this new habit of every single morning having that drink. I know my nutritional bases are covered thanks to AG1. A lot of athletes are now taking AG1, and with 75 high quality ingredients, it's no wonder why. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/buy-round. That's drinkag1.com/buy-round. Check it out. Just on all these media organisations, why the beef? Why does it? Why does it
I said
feel?
we want to win. We want.
But does a rising tide not raise all ships? Because it just seems like there's a lot of
We
competition,
wanna win.
and it seems like it's.
I agree.
Like it's been going. Like you pick up one newspaper and then the newspaper. We talk about the gossip around football clubs, players, and stories. Sometimes it just feels like there's just half of it's pot shots over at one another.
Yeah, it's how.
Or in jealousy, they've got the story. How dare you give that story to the Telegraph? Why would you give it?
I don't understand. Like I genuinely don't understand.
Look, I think a lot of it was born out of the Super League days.
Yep.
A lot of the really hardcore stuff and the really nasty stuff, and I've been the brunt of a lot of that, and so I'll give it back. I'm not just gonna cop it.
But then is it not best there to just go, you know what, I'm just going to ignore it.
When you get enough shit written about you and attacking your credibility or people you talk to or people in the game that you get along with, and they're just copying it because they're associated with you, you're going to fire back.
But then, like JD's point is, sometimes you've just got to address it or just leave it alone because it's never going to go. It's never going to go away. It's going to just perpetuate.
It can perpetuate, but you've got to be able to wear it. Yeah.
But also, a lot of these things are steeped in history, mate. These aren't things that happened 3 days ago.
Yeah, it's 30 years.
It's steep. When I came to Sydney, I just couldn't believe how violent it was between the journalists, you know, and it was like I'd never seen, because in Queensland you only got the Courier Mail, so as long as you get on with Bedell, you don't have to worry about the world, you know. So, but down here, it's just on for young and old, and TV. And you're sitting there going from, what the hell's going on? It's a long way from Cunnamulla to here. And you're thinking to yourself, but it is, mate. They are so competitive. And when Super League broke and New Zealand Limited tried to grab it all, and that's what they did. Yeah, and then it was on for young and old. And you had Packer and Nine, and mate, from out of that, it's grown feuds that'll go on forever in life.
Forever.
You got supporters that will still going on forever in life. What is amazing for me is, here am I, recruited by News Limited to sign the players with Michael O'Connor in the News Limited Super League, takes over as the CEO of South Sydney, who was thrown out of the competition. So things have mellowed over the years, but it's just, it's one of those worlds, isn't it?
Yeah, it's brutal. It's like
it is brutal.
You're on the field, you're doing your best to win. You're hitting blokes as hard as you can, and in the media, we're all trying to win as well.
Will it die? If it started with the Super League War and that's what was the big fracture, will it die when those people exit the game?
I think the most targeted person, media wise, in the game, and I don't know if you get on with Gus at all.
I do.
Yeah, is Phil Gould.
No doubt.
He is targeted and has been targeted, and I don't hide the fact that I get along with him. And I'm a lot of ways I'm aligned. I sit on a panel with him, and I will defend his position, and I will go into bat for him in situations where I think he's been wronged, and that brings me a whole set of enemies. When I was younger, I worked for Peter Peters on radio, Hollywood and Zorba. They were legendary radio calls. I worked with Zorba. He gave me a few breaks when I was younger, and gave me a lot of help when I was younger as a journo. He and Ray Hadley hated each other. So all of a sudden, I became a target for Ray Hadley. I used to get carved up by him, so I'd carve him up back. So, I didn't want these situations, but often when you're associated with someone, so maybe they do die off when dinosaurs like me piss off, and the Gusses of the world retire, and the Phil Rothfields retire. When we're all, gone, maybe it does change. You don't agree, Richard? Or?
Well, I agree totally everything you're saying, but it's so. You were a young guy in '94, and then now you're an older guy with still the same hatred 30 years later. There's young guys running around out there now who hate. What has changed is they changed across more than they ever did before, from one paper to the next. But mate, it's I'm telling you, forget any battle on the football field. The battle amongst the journalism is the worst battle of all, and it's vicious and everything, and it is, and it probably makes the game great the way it's written, but it is just so intense. And you're right. So, for example, Gus, there's no doubt in my mind. I've had my times with Gus over the years, and we all know Gus. He has his ups and his downs. And he's the smartest man in rugby league, though. There's no question in my mind. I could go to breakfast for Gus and spend 4 hours listening to him go on about things. But Gus, as you know, is sometimes he's there and sometimes he's happy with you and sometimes he's not. But the way they vitriolically pull him apart is pathetic, to be totally honest.
Well, that is an agenda. If you're looking for an agenda, Gus must rate on clickbait.
Absolutely.
He must click well.
Oh, Queensland he'd rate because they all hate him. So
okay, well, there you go. I'm not into the whole, you might think I live and die by, I've never seen the charts for, I don't know if they're on charts or on computers or.
You obviously aren't being paid by clickbait.
Well, I'm not.
I know.
I'm not.
There are people who are.
Right, okay, well, I don't know about that. I don't involve myself in that. I do my stories and I just try and be right, and I look for entertaining stories that that you will talk about, or you might want to read, or you might want to talk about with your mates at the pub. That's what I do. And I'm not going to please everybody. People are going to get the shits with me. But as long as I can know that I'm done my best to be right, I'm happy with myself.
So I long for the days of the journos writing stories about the game and the fabric and writing quality stories because they were
Doesn't happen, Richard.
Yeah,
well,
it's
it
gone
does.
now.
I believe it does and I'm not just pushing it out there. And then people say, "Oh, your mates." There's nothing to do with that. But Andrew Webster, there's no doubt that he writes about things that, as you say, are outside the web of the game. Brent Reid is, in my opinion, the best news writer. He worked for the Australian for years. He's only had to swap across. But they still write stories that are, that are into the depth of it all.
Yep.
But the challenge you got is they're no longer there. I mean, the great writers I said before, the Frelingos, the Steve Mascords, that they're no longer in the game for a reason. And I just think that I long for those days of being, and they're never going to come back. I know that.
Well,
but I long for those days.
the media reporting, there is actually, we spoke about AI on a different segment, and AI now is doing match reporting based off all the commentary that's come into it, all the statistics that it's got access to, and it will write a very detailed match report for somebody to read. And go.
It's probably better than 99% of the blokes that are writing there.
Well,
Come on, Richard.
It doesn't have agendas. Well, you can put agendas in the algorithm to lean more in favour of one or the other, but that I think it's just going to keep this going to this opinion pieces, and then if you're on the fence or you only provide any balance, it's almost like I need to hate or love this player, this club, or I'm not going to get anyone engaging in my content.
Perhaps, but I think that. So you talk about the AI, right? That's providing you with a match. I don't remember the last match report I read. I just
true. Yeah, well, we don't, do we?
I watch it on TV.
Yeah.
Well, we got KO minis.
Yeah, all that stuff.
You don't. Well, and
you read
that's
the
it.
match report because you missed the game.
But remember they only got half time because they had to get it in by half time, so he never got the second half of the game.
That's called go last. That's go last. But I'll listen to your press conference because I want to get the news
All the press conferences,
and I want to hear what your view on the game was. So you're providing me with insight that I can't. I don't.
So I find the press conference is the hardest part of the week, the post game one.
What about the during the week one?
I don't mind the during the week one.
There's no pressure.
Like I would enjoy the post game one more if it was more detailed in what actually happened in the game.
Yeah.
But it just gets so hung up on a decision.
Referees.
And it just. And then if you don't answer it, it's over in 2 seconds.
I've got to laugh. Why do they bring a player along to the post-match press conference? They never ask
Especially
him
a pretty
question.
one like Cam Murray.
But in the one during the week, that's usually we're dealing with issues that have happened. We're not talking about the game.
Yeah.
We're talking about why did you bench Lockie Ilias? Or that's the sort of stuff we're talking. We're not talking about the referee stuff so much, or what did you think of Latrell getting abused on social media?
Yeah.
That's what. So again, we're not talking about the game as such. We're talking about the broader soap opera of the game, and that's what I think people want to talk about.
Is that because that's the only access you get?
Yeah, because that's when we get you. That's when we get to talk to you. I can't. It's very hard for me to get you on TV on a Wednesday when it's not your day.
Yeah.
Well, is that the human interest side of things?
Yeah.
Because that's what people want to navigate towards. They're not probably going to. Well, and also you're not going to give much away tactically. Obviously, as a coach, I'm not going to. As a journalist, you're not going to go, "Hey, JD, can you just unpack in as much detail as possible how you're going to break down, the defence of the Penrith Panthers."
So the mums and dads who are watching, or the kids who are watching the news at 6 p.m, aren't going to really want to hear that. They want to know about the people. Like one of the stories I did recently, which I really enjoyed, was talking to Cam McInnes about his young kid who's got autism, and he spoke beautifully about that.
Wonderful person.
And
Cam McInnes.
I don't really know him that well, but
His parents are wonderful too.
Spoke beautifully, and the way he conveyed what his son
Noah
goes through, and the way he gets inspiration from that is a story I enjoy doing, and I enjoy telling, and I enjoy getting reaction to. And the newsroom, when you've got a good or an interesting story is when the newsroom will stop for a second, watch what you're doing, because they're busy in there. And they'll say, "Oh, that was a great story," or the people who aren't interested in rugby league are watching that story. And that's that's the sort of story that I think people want to hear about and want to know about.
It is, Danny.
But we don't get that access all the time. The only reason I got that access was because Cronulla had an open media day where we got to speak to players for, half an hour, got to delve slightly into their lives. It's like when I speak to you in Origin, like I get to ask you other questions other than just the usual stuff, get you to play the guitar. Yeah, because that's what people want.
I play the piano on one of them. I don't actually know how to play the piano that well, and I try my best. It was the first game in Perth, I think, and it was apparently it was the piano that Michael Jackson had played while he was there, and they got me to have a little play, and I was hitting it with individual fingers.
You don't want to get the Michael Jackson test. In all seriousness, no, Danny, beautiful story about Cam McGuinness and his boy, and everyone is in agreement. That's beautiful. It doesn't create any sort of conversation or any sort of debate.
No, but it's
a great
story.
human interest story. And you're talking that segues just nicely.
I don't know if it clicked well. I don't know. I've got no idea.
And it's a feel good. Yeah. It's a genuine feel good story about an element of a professional athlete's life that most people will be completely unaware of,
and that people probably out there can relate to.
Yeah, 100%. But in terms of that access to both the coach and the player, I just want to ask you Dale, is there too much access right now, or is there not enough? We look at the NBA and the dressing room, locker room access almost up until 15 minutes before the game begins. Certain media are allowed in and behind that inner sanctum.
I think to JD's point, you don't really want to give anything away. Technically and tactically, pre-game, you want to hold your cards as close to your chest as you can, but it's hard to not be cliched in your response to what you're saying, but at the same time, you don't want to give too much information away. So you're pretty broad in what you're saying and the information that you're giving. And similarly, when we do the halftime, they come on and speak to you at halftime, they're sort of one or two quick comments while you're trying to catch your breath. I don't think there's a really in-depth sort of analysis of what the game is at that period of time. And I just feel like there are some components of it. Yeah, obviously when they come in pre-game, talk to you, and that halftime, that I don't know that the fans particularly enjoy listening to those because they're too broad.
They are, but I can remember a couple of weeks ago on Fox interviewing Api Coruscant in the warm-up. He's mic'd up in the warm-up, getting ready for the game. And I think, and I'd be the same as you, but I think you're naive if you don't think that fan is going wow. I'm almost in a place here I'll more than likely never ever get to. Yeah. Just to hear what your thoughts are in those final pre-game moments, as cliche, but you know what, the cliche, it's probably true.
Yeah. But listening to those, the players that are mic'd up on Fox, I know I've listened to Latrell do one, Pat Carrigan did one. They're really interesting, but I think you can also get a little bit from another team, pick up a little bit of knowledge from listening to it. So technically and tactically, I could hear, this is what their mentality, you can kind of get a little gauge on what their mentalities might be listening to some of the dialogue that's going on.
I reckon you sound like Des.
Desi.
Yeah. Mate,
Des,
that's the Des, the Bellamy in you where you're like, give him nothing.
Yeah, but honestly,
I don't reckon anyone is.
I've been offered up to do one of those mic'd up, and I'm just like, I don't particularly want to give away, from our point of view in our team, any mentalities, any technical aspects of our game to fuel anyone. You know what I mean?
When we were speaking to Api Coruscant in warm-up, it was just like, Api, what's running through your head right now? You normally play 9. Now you're playing scrum half in the number 7 jersey. What's the difference in a warm-up from a player's point of view? And he's just, taking us through it. And I probably knew, but you can tell the fans, the fans at home are just like, wow, how good is this? Should we be giving more access?
Yeah. Well, and another point as well, I think they had Brad Arthur in the box. They mic'd him up as well. And from a fan's point of view, love it. I enjoyed watching it and listening to it. But as I said, you're going to get coaches. I know, particularly talking about someone like Des, he's not going to give an inch. He doesn't give an inch in a press conference. You know what I mean? He'll talk in a bit of a riddle and make you question what your question was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
you could use it to your advantage as a coach. You'd be like, just say on the mic, we're just getting really ready to pepper their right edge here.
Yeah.
Someone from the other organisation is watching it going, hang on. right edge.
Yeah.
Unlucky we're going left.
One of the rarest things in the world was, from the media perspective, was getting Manly training. We couldn't get a shot. Yeah, like it's in the the protocols. You have to get X amount of. Des wouldn't let you near it. Bulldogs training you out after 2 seconds. To Jason's credit, we get plenty of time just to shoot 10, 15 minutes at the start, warm down.
What are you going to find out in 10 or 15 minutes about the game? It's just rubbish.
Like I know a lot of the time, and particularly at every club I've been at, if there's a journalist there and they're filming, you're not going to give any of your edge plays away. You know what I mean?
Well, no, we usually get
you're
told
going to be
not to.
warming up. You're going to be doing
Usually
such and
only
such.
field journal.
Yeah. So, but like you'd make a point of going, or make sure we don't give absolutely anything away. Don't even stand up in any formation to show that could potentially be that edge.
And you reckon
Especially in finals games.
a coach is sitting at home going, "Oh, I saw that on the news that in the background there, I could see this bloke doing." Can you
That has happened.
In finals
That
games,
it
where
has
you might
happened.
get the odd trick shot, and they definitely don't want people filming you. But generally, you're watching plenty of footage.
I just
leading
want
into it, but-
Freddie Fittler to interview before a game and say, Dale, what's the name of your dog?
I forget. It's been a time.
Well, be as much
I'll give
interest
it
in
away.
you giving him the background of what you're going to do with the game. What's the name of your dog?
Yeah.
What's your daughter's name, though?
Yeah.
You bring up Freddie. It was interesting because he brought in the policy of we could talk to everybody all
Yeah.
the time, and from our perspective, it's fabulous. Like we could do it, but by the end of the week, we talked to everybody. Like, we didn't need to, we didn't need to do that, again. But the option of having that was so good from a journalistic.
Well,
point
even
of
that,
view.
how good's that for State of Origin? Like
Great.
watching that at home, and you go to Billy Slater.
Not everyone
And then-
likes that, James. People go, I don't want to hear from the coach. I want to see the game. And like, it's funny, like not every. Why would you want to hear from the coach? He's not going to tell you anything. I like it. I like to hear it.
I'll put the game on.
See, there you go. Look.
I'm going to talk, showing a photo of him in the box talking, and the game's going.
Yeah. I feel frustrated
Put him
looking
in
at
a
it,
little
actually.
box in the corner.
There you go. Yeah.
I feel frustrated looking at it because I know that they would feel uncomfortable and not want to. They just want to look at the game. I just know that from their point of view, they're thinking,
They're well
let's
paid,
finish this
Dale.
up. Yeah. Oh no, I understand that, and I understand from a spectator point of view that may be interesting, but obviously looking at it from
my point of view,
sitting
it's
in a
great.
coaching box, no, they're probably not wanting.
I reckon
engage.
most fans
about
would
you,
just
Jeff?
be. I reckon most fans would be hanging off every word.
Yeah, so
like
yeah.
riding that emotion of a coach's box. Like people don't get to experience that.
But if we just give them everything, where's the magic?
I agree
There has
with
to
you.
be a little bit of magic, when-
Untouchable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the team song goes. I used to despise people being inside the team song.
Most watched thing on any club's thing is the team song.
Really?
So only had done by the announcement of the team on Tuesdays. And the clubs used to have that exclusively. So you do a program, then NRL realised how valuable that was and cut it out. So the NRL got announced it first before you can actually do it. But the team song's the most watched thing for the week on your socials.
I remember in the old days, Richo, we used to get the team. I used to be in the big league offices with Bill Morty, Zorba, and we'd be there on a Tuesday night late having a Chinese meal, and all the teams would come through on the fax machine. That's how, and they would come into the big league the next day.
Yeah.
And that's how you got the team.
I remember the team song.
That's where you saw
They used to say to me,
it's a
Richard,
reserve grade team.
They should have it. We should
Hey,
have
Richard,
it.
what are you trying to do? Hide behind the poles? You know, you're hiding behind the poles. Like when he's there, I'm hiding behind because Adam Reynolds' favourite thing was get the can of beer and spill it all over Richard. And whatever it was, he'd run around the room. So I'll be behind the pole, not to get out, like stop Reno from throwing beer all over me. But anyway, that's another story. So, he's a little smart.
I think the trust thing's a big thing with the going back to the journalist and more access and all that sort of stuff.
Well,
how do we create an environment where we can build that trust?
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard
What I was going to say,
when there's so much gossip.
that's it. It's probably the ideal would be to build a little bit of trust. And one thing we mentioned there was our old coach Des Hasler that would put the open media day for media out at Belmore at like 5 a.m., 6 a.m. for him to discourage people from coming. But that's
I
because
got that changed.
Yeah, because he didn't want to give much away. Very
not much.
secretive
Nothing.
coach. But then he didn't play the game, and sometimes you need to play the game. So when he was going through difficult moments, like the people in the media, the knives, they were pre-sharpened. They were ready to go, and they almost couldn't wait. Like,
Well, you saw how it ended at Manly.
yeah,
That was brutal.
and is that
be part of it.
Is that partly
Big part
due
of it.
to the fact that he gives nothing, makes life difficult, and I know he's got his justifications for it, which I've spoke to him about before, which I'm not going to, for personal reasons, I'm not going to disclose. But that said, like if he was more engaging in that game, perhaps then when the trajectory is down and there's some news stories that need a positive spin on it, everyone just goes, well, no.
That's usually how it works. If you're getting a bit back, you're more inclined to help someone out.
Yeah, I'm sure Des would accept that. That's how he's going to play it, and he's fine with that. End of the day, if his team's winning, he's not going to have a problem.
Well, the coach is probably the one who everyone thinks would have no media engagement or dislike the media was your old mate Wayne Bennett, but he's the master. He's the master.
He loves the media. I don't read anything. Richo, what about this? What are we doing about this? I thought you didn't read the media.
He knows everything that's going on. He could write a good column every week. Wayne Bennett.
Easy.
Do all coaches watch all media, JD?
Watch all media?
Well, or sorry, are you across it all? Are you across all the shows?
Not so much lately, no. I actually got more out of not watching them than I did watching them. And at first,
there's a lesson there.
I would watch them, and then I was like, and then it was educating everybody outside my house in my circle not to be messaging me about what's being said in the media.
See,
That's the hard
you're so
part.
That's the hard
enthralled in
part,
rugby league.
yeah.
You really don't want to hear about any other rugby league. Like if you're playing and there's 5 days a week training, you don't want to come home and start watching 360 to see what's going on. Or
Well, some of them do.
yeah, well, but I don't understand it because it's just so takes up all your life for 7 days a week.
I think it's just
Why in the world would you want to watch it again?
it just has the ability to conflict your thoughts as well. Or,
Yeah.
Good to have
And
a
you hear
clear
about it
mind.
anyway, 'cause
Yeah,
your wife
just-
was like, I can't believe they said about you, Jason.
I
Or your
believe-
mother will ring you up and say, I can't believe they said that.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
That's
I've
that
got
is some of the
46
work.
years
Yeah.
in my life, and I've got to this
Yeah,
point,
that-
so
that
I
is-
don't need to be too caught up in everything that's been said.
That is the
about it.
difficult thing when you're trying to avoid it and someone says, have you seen this?
Yeah,
And you're like,
correct.
well, you know.
Not till now, I
didn't
haven't.
want to until you
Yeah.
showed it to me.
Thank you so
I've
much.
got a sister and a mum who would, they're not happy hearing the things they're hearing, and I'm trying to say, I'm all right.
My mum's
Yeah.
on Facebook as well, and I've told her just over the course of my career, don't read, don't look at anything. There's a picture or anything. Somebody is going to say, regardless of how good you're going, could have been Greg Inglis at his peak.
Yep.
Someone will say something negative about him. Just like, don't read any of it. And just stuck by it.
Because there's
I don't
people
actually
on there,
stuck by
it goes back to tribalism. There's people
Yeah.
on there that are supporters of other clubs. Doesn't matter
Yeah.
how good you think you are. I'm going to tear you down.
Or they're just racist. People who don't
Of course there is.
Correct.
100%.
Massive race.
Yeah, well, that's obviously nobody agrees with that, and that's abhorrent. So we do need to look at punishing those people in the correct form. Dale, just quickly, I want to come to you for the last point on all things media. Former players criticising current players. We've seen that recently. What are your thoughts on that? And obviously, that's open to the rest of the table as well. But I wanted to get your thoughts.
I'm
on
not familiar with. I know you seem to be thinking about a specific person, but it generally.
Willie and Tyson Gamble.
Oh yeah,
No, that's a recent example.
Not addressing any particular example, but I feel like talking to players about the back in the day sort of thing, that a lot worse happened. I feel from talking to past players who played. Back in my day we did this. It's just the fact that there was no social media. They didn't get caught for it. So I feel like all those things that players have done or got sanctioned for these days happened back then. They just weren't sanctioned. So
You're talking about like if an off-field incident was to happen.
that's what I'm talking about. Like,
Well,
I
that
feel
on-field,
like just those sorts of things, and scrutinising players for doing those sorts of things, I feel like probably isn't fair. You're probably talking about from more of a performance point of view, but in terms of the way that I'm talking about it, I feel like that back in the day mentality is.
And I don't think journos should be necessarily criticising players for some of the off-field stuff that goes on, because some of the journos aren't living the cleanest lives, and that gives me the shits when I know that if there's journos who have been partying and then they're criticising.
I'm all ears, mate.
Yeah, criticising.
I'll give you a few if you want them.
I'm just saying, I just think that's wrong. But yeah, sorry, you go about the former players.
That was all my point was. But obviously, it's more so when you're attacking character. I think that's not on. You can not attack, but you can analyse someone's performance and be critical of it. Correct. But I don't think you can be critical of someone's character.
I don't think I can be critical of necessary players' performances. I don't think that's really what I should be doing because I haven't done the hard yards. But
Do you feel like it's someone who
I feel
hasn't played rugby
uncomfortable.
league and knows rugby league that can still be critical of a performance?
I don't
Not
feel.
knowing all of the ins and outs. Like you look at statistically, you can say how many runs did he have, how many meters did he make, how many tackles did he make. But if you look at it, someone who makes 30 tackles that have got real oomph in them and they're working hard, they're retreating back hard to the line, as opposed to someone who's making 50, but their retreat speed slow and they're.
I don't watch
you know
it.
what I mean?
I don't watch it that
someone who
closely.
can analyse a game with that in depth.
Yeah.
Do journalists have that level of detail?
Some
that they
might,
can?
some might, but not me. I feel if it's an obvious moment in a game where it's cost someone the game, then I have to talk about it.
Yeah, I
But
definitely
don't-
feel like we look at the game statistically and go, oh, such and such had 20 carries, he made 40.
I don't look
he
at
had
the game
40
like that.
tackles, but someone might have had a better game who had 10 carries and 20 tackles. You know what I mean? Like it's very subjective what it is.
Yeah, I don't get in. I feel like as a journo, if there's a game-changing play, someone drops a bomb or something, and then you've got to talk about it, and you've got to talk about whether that's
Obvious.
it's something obvious thing. But in terms of the technicalities of it all, I don't feel like that's my job to do that.
Danny, just quickly on those off-field incidences,
Yes.
I know I wanted to make the final point with you. I think we've seen a change. If you think back to one of the incidences involving Mitchell Pearce and Todd Carney versus what we've seen recently with Valentine Holmes, and I'm not accusing him of any particular wrongdoing, but do you think we're a bit more in reality from where we were 10 years ago with those two incidences in particular with Mitchell
What
Pearce?
do you mean we're too hard on the Pierce?
Yes,
and
and Carney.
Well, the Pierce thing, definitely, like way over the top.
And if you compare, say, Carney
Todd
urinating
Carney, look,
in his own mouth,
I know
photographic
Todd well,
evidence, and
right.
versus the photograph of Val Holmes.
Yeah, look, I know Todd well, and I covered that story quite heavily, and I think the image was more shocking, and people didn't understand it. That's why it generated such.
But it effectively ended his career. Where Val Holmes, I think, if that image was then, we're looking at a far greater sanction.
We're more accustomed to stuff, aren't we?
Well, is it accustomed, or is it just the climate has changed?
No, I think we're
attitudes have
accustomed.
changed.
I think attitudes have changed. Yeah, but with the Carney one, for instance, that was shocking. And to me, like I was like, what the hell? And I like Todd, and I get on with Todd, and he spoke to me about that whole thing. But at the time, it was like, what's going on here? Like that's not from the world that a lot of people live in. It isn't. No, am I right? or wrong?
Yeah, but
you know what I mean? Like, that's why I'm saying it was weird. That's why it was hard for everyone to comprehend. That's why it was such a big story at the time.
But it's for Todd, he's had several off-field things, hasn't it? So it was like the end of something. I'm with you. I don't think it should have ended his career at all. I think, first of all,
I think if it happens now, it doesn't.
Yeah, I probably agree.
And the other issue was that some pricks taking a photo of him.
It's illegal,
in the bathroom, and then some pricks
distributed it.
Yeah, that's
actually illegal.
That's an issue,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's an issue.
in the toilet. Yeah,
Like, who fucking?
No, that's all right.
Who takes photos of people in a toilet? What sort of person?
I've got a name from, but
but again, the Mitchell Pearce one, it's just public. Once it's out there, it's how much the public outrage to it will decide the outcome.
Well, there's video of it. That's what.
100%.
That's what.
Yeah.
If there was no video, that's not. It's just like hearsay and whatever, and who cares? But because there was a video of it, and again, someone filmed it, someone distributed it. That's where it becomes an issue. But the reaction to that was miles over the top from everybody.
Yeah,
I'm really interested in the legal side of it. This stuff.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I don't think you can do that.
Yeah, the actual
What law is he broken?
the actual crime is the distributor of the material.
Yeah.
That's where
But I think to justify the sanctions, from a contractual point of view, what are they going on? He bought the game in a disrepute. That must be the only thing that they could be using because he's broken no laws.
No.
He's insulted anyone.
Well, in
He's done
Todd's case,
nothing.
didn't he successfully take action against Cronulla for his dismissal, or at least he tried to?
I did.
I think he was successful.
Yeah, I
because
think
there
it's
wasn't a
quite-
proper due process.
Yeah, because they
before
didn't
it,
go through the
yeah.
process of, you should have got this warning, or you should have had this.
Correct.
The whole, how to sack a bloke, Richo. I mean, that wasn't how you sack a bloke. And in Pierce's case,
You got to
it was
make
just-
sure you, when you sack them, you've got it all in line.
that's right. And in Pierce's case, he didn't get sacked, but he got a $125,000 fine, which was
Dropped from Origin.
dropped from Origin, changed his
Eight
career.
games. 8 games.
8
suspension.
games. But the NRL now admit that was a mistake.
I said, I don't think that would happen now. Like all the sanctions, the
No
8 weeks,
way.
the
No way.
financial fine, all of it.
Well, not for that
How much did
incident.
that affect his future earnings as well?
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah.
huge money.
And his mental health. And
Yep.
I remember him having to go around to every media organisation and sit down and do a one-on-one interview. And that's how the Roosters managed it.
Rehashing it all.
Rehashing it and
all
apologising.
over again.
and I did the wrong thing. I thought, it was a stupid thing. But I reckon there'd be plenty of blokes on the piss who do more stupid things, who are working in banks or...
Mate, let's be honest. Going back 2020, some of the stuff they're doing is tame compared to some of the stuff Mad Mondays and because there was none of the phones. You could do whatever you want. I still remember in a grand final when we got on the piss at the Campbell Hotel, and the journo from the Courier Mail come along to the piss. They got on the blind and they stripped him nude and threw him out in the main road. Like, how could that happen today? And how did it
wouldn't
get
happen
written
today.
in the paper?
Yeah, it wouldn't.
In the old
So-
days, if you were thirsty on a Mad Monday, it wasn't hard to find a bubbler.
No, what? That's exactly right, mate. Well said.
I'm from a different world.
Getting dressed up. It was getting dressed down, taking all your clothes off was the problem.
Well, that's a good way to end it. We'll do
There's the
the.
headline for you.
We'll do the one. We'll go to Dale. Anything you'd like to see change or keep all things media coverage?
Yeah, the clickbait headlines, I'd see them out.
So I wouldn't be clicking on Hunt moves to
No,
Queensland.
don't click on it.
Got me. JD?
Yeah, the stories out of nothing, making stories up. That's what I'd like to see. Keep it factual about actual events, things that you know are happening.
I just want to see closer relationships between players and coaches and journos.
Well, as the only person who voted in favour of social media last night, I'd also like to make the point that I love the media because I wouldn't have a job without them, and they pay for all the bills that are going forward on it. But it's not like with social media. It's not the medium. It's how you manage it and how you manage it. That's a challenge, but without it, we don't survive. So it's really down to how do you manage it.
All right, brilliant. Good stuff, guys.